How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Chav, Daf 20 of Masechta BavaKama. Friends, yo friends. Friends. So, the Mishnah starts off with the Gemara today starts off with kind of like some BavaKama-y kind of things, like Shane and stuff. And then we get, Lemaisa, to a very, 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 very interesting discussion. A discussion of a concept called Zenene v'Zelu Chaser. Very, very interesting. Has anybody heard of Zenene v'Zelu Chaser? It means if Ruvain gets benefit and it doesn't technically have any downside to Shimon. So then, does Ruvain need to pay Shimon? Well, we're going to get to the discussion. Sorry, I guess technically I'm stalling a little bit while I roll up my sleeves. But it's an interesting discussion that we will get to after I finish rolling up my sleeves and after we get through the first part of the daf. All right, friends, let us begin. All right, we're going to start in daf Chof Amud Aleph, about 5 lines into the page. 5 lines into the page. Amar Ilfa says, Ilfa behema b'rshus arabim. Okay, if you have an animal in Rishus Harabim, fine. Ufashta tzavare, and it outstretched its neck. V'achla melgabe chaverto, and ate from its friend. Right? You have Reuven the cow, Reuven the ox, and Shimon the ox, and they're both walking in the public domain. Shuk Machne Yehuda. Shimon the ox reaches over and starts eating stuff Shimon on the ox starts eating stuff from Reuven the ox's back. Shimon the ox, come on, it's not very nice. Chayeves. So, wait, what am I talking about? Oh yes, no. What am I talking about when I said what am I talking about? Right, that meaning, even though Reuven the ox and Shimon the ox are walking Rishus Harabim, but nonetheless, because Shimon the ox is outstretching its neck and eating it not off of the floor of Rishus Harabim, but off the back of Reuven the ox. I don't even remember who Reuven the ox and Shimon the ox are anymore, but I hope you get the point. It's like its own little Rishus Harabim kind of thing. Like Reuven the ox becomes like its own, right, the Rishus of his owner, Reuven, I imagine. Reuven the ox belongs to Reuven. And, so Shimon the ox's owner, Shimon, is going to be chayiv to pay Reuven the ox's owner, Reuven, for what Shimon's ox Shimon ate. My time up. How come? Gabi chaverta kechotzer hanizak tami. Because we consider Shimon the stuff on Shimon the ox to be considered like Shimon's domain. I messed that up. We consider the stuff on Reuven the ox's back to be part of Reuven's domain, and therefore Shimon the ox's owner Shimon needs to pay Reuven the ox's owner Reuven. So let's say that this supports this notion. If a fellow was walking in the Rishus Harabim and he had a basket or something swung behind his back, and then an ox comes and eats from the basket. And ate from it. So the ox's owner is going to be chayiv to pay back the fellow whose basket was eaten from his back. So we want to say that that's a support for this initial notion that if an ox outstretches its neck or in any animal I guess, eats something from, whether we want to say the back of an animal or the basket that's swung behind somebody's back, it's going to be chayiv. But says the Gemara, no, it's not a good proof from that brisa, because that brisa is not actually talking about, meaning the brisa of the guy with the basket behind the back is not actually talking about when the animal outstretched its neck. Rather, Kedamar Rav, it's like Rav says, bikofetzes. Okay? It's talking about the animal was jumping. So Rav talks about a situation that we're going to see in a second where the animal is jumping. So we're also going to say it's talking about where he's jumping, not just like outstretching the neck. Where's Rava talking about when the animal is jumping? It's on that which Rav Shaya says. if you have a behema in Rishus Harabim, halcha ve'achla, if it eats while it's walking, petura, so then it's petura, right? Shein in Rishus, it's normal. So shein in Rishus Harabim, and shein Rishus Harabim is pater. Amda ve'achla chayeves, but if it stopped and it ate, then the owner is chayev. Mashna halcha, what's the difference when it's walking? To orchei hu, because that is it's normal for the animal to eat while it's walking, apparently. Amdanami orchehu. But even if it stands, shouldn't that also be orche? What's the difference? Rava b'kofetzes. Rava says, well, it's talking about where it jumps up on its hind legs and eats it, and that is why you'd be chayiv, I think. I don't even remember what's what anymore. I don't even know what's what anymore. I should probably read that again. Right, if it eats while it's walking, it's betura, because we're saying that that's normal. On the valcha chayeves, right, if it stops, then you're saying chayev. But we said, Mashna halcha the orche who amda nami orche. So we say, but why should you be chayev when it stops? Isn't that also normal? So Amarav b'kofetz as well. It's talking about where it kind of like jumps on its like hind legs, and therefore it's abnormal, and that's why you'd be chayev chatzi nezek. Okie dokie. By Reb Zera asakashim, skagel mau. This stuff is really technical. I feel like there's been like a bunch of like really technical stuff that I've been like just trying to get through because it's like very technical. Alright, this is one of them. So, Boy Reb Zera asks, Misgalgal Mau, what if something goes rolling? What are we talking about? Well, if you have, I don't know, straw in somebody's private domain, and the animal is standing in Rishus Harabim. Okay, so you have the animal standing in Rishus Harabim, and it's like pulling out the straw from the Rishus HaYachid into the Rishus Harabim. Now remember, an animal that eats in Rishus HaYachid, so then is chayiv for shein, but in Rishus Harabim he's pater from shein. So if the animal is standing in Rishus Harabim, I don't know. I keep on forgetting what I'm saying, and I don't know if I'm saying the right things. I don't know. I guess maybe I'm like tired, but it's not that late. It's like 4 in the afternoon, 5 in the afternoon. I don't know. I keep on forgetting what I'm saying. But if the animal's in Rishus Harabim, and maybe because it's also just super technical. So, but anyways, the animal's in Rishus Harabim, and the straw is in Rishus HaYachid. The animal standing in Rishus Harabim, yeah, it feels like Masechta Shabbos, right? And then he pulls out the stuff from Rishus HaYachid into Rishus Harabim. So we want to know what the halacha is, right? So of course, right. So I think I was saying a second ago that if an animal eats in Rishus Harabim, he is potter. But if the animal eats in Rishus HaYachid, then he's chayiv because uvir b'stei acher. So maybe let's read that again. So by Reb Zera asks, Misgalgal Mau, Heichidami. So what exactly is this Misgalgal? What are we asking about? Kigon, for example, Tekaima, Omer Rishus HaYachid, that there is straw in Rishus HaYachid. V'kam Misgalgal v'asim Rishus HaYachid, Rishus HaRabim, Mai. Right, and the animal standing in Rishus HaRabim and pulling out the straw from the Rishus HaYachid into the Rishus HaRabim and then eating it. So the shaila is he going to be chayiv because he's in Rishus? No, is he going to be potter because he's in Rishus HaRabim, or is he going to be chayiv because it comes from Rishus HaYachid? Tashma kamanir to Tani Reb Chia, that Reb Chia taught masui. Well, if you have a masui, if you have a some kind of a load, miktasu b'fnim miktasu b'chutz, it's partially inside and partially outside. Well, achlav b'fnim chayeves, achlav b'chutz petura. Well, if it eats it inside, then chayeves. And then outside petura, my lab miskagavasim. We want to say means miskagavasim, meaning if it is like pulling the stuff from the inside to the outside, then petura. Okay. No. Ema achla al mash bifnim chayeves al mash b'chutz petura. No, let's say that whatever it eats inside would be potter, whatever it eats outside would be fakir. Whatever it eats inside would be chayiv, whatever it eats outside would be potter, but nothing to do with dragging. Alternatively, alternatively, Reb Chia is talking about like some like long stalks of stuff that like, even if you right. So if the animal is standing in Rishus HaRabim and starts eating it and starts munching and starts pulling, it's all connected. It's like a long stalk, so it just kind of starts getting closer to him into Rishus Harabim. So in that case, he's going to be potter. But if it's fakert, if he's standing in Rishus Yochid and he starts munching on this like long stalk of the thing and starts getting pulled into Rishus Yochid, so it's all going to be considered like Rishus Yochid. He's going to be chai. But in a situation where there's like stuff that you're like, it's not like one long thing, but like kind of smaller things, and he's kind of pulling them. So like part of it, they're like individual pieces inside, individual pieces outside. Then he has to pull them towards him with the domain that he's in order to eat them. That's a different story. Let's go weiter. Okay, so that was super technical stuff until then. It's kind of like exhausted me, mini exhaustion. But now we're actually starting to get to some interesting sugyas. Now we're starting to get some interesting stuff. That stuff was super technical and not for me. But now we're getting into some sugyas. Now we're getting into some sugyas. I think I'm just tired. The shtickle exhausted everything. All right, so much going on in the world right now, right? This could be a little exhausting. Okay, so now, so we had said in the Mishnah that an animal that eats stuff that it normally eats, so then you'll be chayiv nezek shalom. If it eats like ksus v'kelim, clothing, vessels, so it doesn't normally eat that stuff, so therefore it's meshuna and it's going to be chatzi nezek. Now we said that all of this that we said, chayiv for eating stuff that it normally eats, stuff that it doesn't normally eat, that's in Rishus HaNizak. But if it's in Rishus HaYachid, if it's in Rishus HaRabim, so then potter. So the shaila is it only talking about, peiros v'yirakas, things that it normally eats? So we're saying, because shein, or it says beer v'stei acher. So shein, you're only chayiv b'Rishus HaYachid. You're potter b'Rishus HaRabim. But what about if an animal eats a shirt? Right, vessels, right, clothing, vessels. So this is things that it doesn't normally eat. So therefore, what? How does that play out in Rishus Harabim? Are we saying that it's potter also for that in Rishus Harabim, or are we saying that no, because it's abnormal, so then it's basically like mishuna karen, right? It's like chatzi nezek of karen. So maybe it should be chayiv. So when the Mishnah says that in Rishus Harabim potter, what's it referring to? Is it referring to only the things that it normally eats, or is it referring even to potter by ksus v'kelim? So Omer Rav Akulu. Rav says that it's referring to all of the things that Rishus Harabim, he's going to be potter for things that it normally eats and for things that it doesn't normally eat. It's going to be potter. So my time, how come potter? Because kol mishane uva'acher v'shina bo potter, because it's a double shinui. It's a double awkward, meaning people don't normally just like leave garments lying around in the public domain. You're not just going to have garments done. So that in and of itself is strange. And then it's also strange for the animal to eat a garment or a vessel. So because there's like kind of two strange things going on here, like why was it there in the first place and why was this animal eating it? So that is why Rav says even in Rishus Harabim, potter. But Shmuel says, Loshanu ella peiros v'yirakas. No, only peiros v'yirakas is potter in Rishus Harabim, because uvir b'stei chavero, not in Rishus Harabim. Havoksus v'kelim. When it comes to clothing or vessels, chayeves, you'd be chayeves in Rishus Harabim because it's mishuna karen, right? It's karen. It's chatzi nezek in Rishus Harabim. V'chein Omar Rish Lakish, and similarly says Rish Lakish Akulu. Rish Lakish says like Rav, that for all of the things you'd be potter in Rishus Harabim. That for all of the things you'd be potter in Rishus Harabim because it's a double weird thing. The other Rish Lakish the time, and Rish Lakish is consistent with this reasoning. The Rish Lakish says Shtei paris b'Rishus Harabim, that if you have two cows in Rishus Harabim, achas revutzo, one of them is squatting, v'achas ma'aleches, and one of them is walking. Now, to squat, for an animal to squat in Rishus Harabim is not normal. For an animal to walk in Rishus Harabim is normal. But ma'aleches b'revutzo, and then the animal, so it's called Reuven the ox and Shimon the ox. So Reuven the ox is just squatting, squatting peacefully, not bothering anybody. And Shimon the ox walks by and kicks him. So then Reuven the ox says, "Ouch." why'd you do that? And Shimon says, Petura. So Shimon the ox's owner, Shimon, is potter, because it's a double abnormal thing, right? Like, why is Reuven just squatting there, and why is Shimon kicking him? So, but Revutza b'maleches chayeves. But if the squatting one, not only is it squatting, it's also kicking. It's a good thing it has 4 legs, I guess. So then chayeves, because like, okay, you just have one weird squatting, kicking cow, but Shimon the cow is not doing anything wrong. So therefore, Reuven, the cow's owner, Reuven, will be chayev. So we see that Rish Lakish kind of like, buys into this like double weirdo thing, being potter. Rabbi Yochanan Amar says, Rabbi Yochanan, Loshanu ela peres virakis. Rabbi Yochanan says that only peres virakis would be potter in Rosh Hashanah. Avoksus v'kelim chayeves, but ksus v'kelim would be chayev, because it's like Meshuna Karen in Rosh Hashanah. Lema Rabbi Yochanan leisle de Rish Lakish afilu b'shtei paros. So let's say that just like Rabbi Yochanan says that you'd be chayev for the ksus v'kelim in Rosh Hashanah, so he would also disagree with Rish Lakish when it comes to the cows, and say that if Reuven the cow is squatting there and Shimon the cow kicks him, so let's say that Rabbi Yochanan would say that he would be chayiv there, because it doesn't hold of like the double weirdo thing. No. L'olam islay. No, really, Rabbi Yochanan, when it comes to Reuven the Reuven the ox and Shimon the ox, he agrees with Rish Lakish that if Reuven the ox is squatting and Shimon the ox kicks him, then Shimon, whose ox, Shimon the ox, did the kicking, would be potter. Ksus av the inche demanche glime umetapche, because when it comes to clothing, people put down, somebody's taking sitting, he's taking a rest in the Rosh Hashanah, and he puts down his garment, like, okay, it might be there, and it can get damaged, but eaten, I guess. Aval behema lav orcha, but this situation with the Reuven the ox and Shimon the ox, that's just super weird, and therefore Shimon would be potter when his ox kicks Reuven the ox, who's just squatting there and minding his own business. Ve'im nenis mishalemes v'chulei. Okay, so this is super interesting. So if I understand correctly, basically what we're saying is, okay, so if Reuven goes into Shimon's chotzer with Reuven's ox, and he eats Shimon's fruits. So in that case, Reuven is chayiv to pay for the damages, because uvier b'stei acher, right? Reuven's ox ate Shimon's fruits in Shimon's house, so Reuven is chayiv. Now we said that if this happens in Rosh Hashanah, however, so then he's potter. Right? Reuven is potter because it says uvier b'stei acher, not in Rosh Hashanah. So now, so the interesting thing is he completely potter for sin Rosh Hashanah? If Shimon was in Rosh Hashanah, and Reuven's cow eats his stuff in Rosh Hashanah, so Reuven's completely off the hook? So interestingly, the Mishnah had said, Mishalemis Mashanenis. If I understand correctly, what it means is that meaning in Rosh Hashanah, Reuven is not completely off the hook when his cow eats Shimon's stuff, but he doesn't pay for the damages, he pays for the hanoah. Pays for the benefit. And let's read the Gemara for a second. BavaKama, tell me more about this hanoah. What does it mean you pay for the hanoah? So Rabba Amar Dmei Amir, Rav Amar Dmei Sorim. So Rabba says the value of straw, and Rabba says the value of straw, Rabba says the value of Sorim Bezol, cheap barley. So meaning if Reuven's cow ate Shimon's barley, now Reuven's cow normally eats straw. So we're saying Reuven's cow ate Shimon's barley. Reuven does not need to pay back Shimon for the barley that he ate. That would be the damages, right? Meaning if I don't know, Reuven's ox ate $100 worth of Shimon's barley, so the damages are $100. But we're saying Reuven doesn't have to pay Shimon $100. Rather, we see some machlokas Rabbah and Rava. Rabbah says that Reuven could say to Shimon, look, my ox doesn't normally eat barley. My ox normally eats straw. This is how much straw costs. I'll pay you. Like, what was the benefit? The benefit was that Reuven's ox just ate, and therefore the ox is fed. So now Reuven says, look, I know that my ox ate barley, but, usually I just feed straw, so I'll pay you for how much I would normally feed him, straw. That's Rabbah's opinion. Rava says, no, Reuven has to pay Shimon for the barley, but not necessarily barley at the current going rate. He could pay the barley at the cheapest. Maybe sometimes barley is more expensive, sometimes less expensive. So he pays the cheap amount for barley, not the expensive amount for barley. So how much is, so I'm reading again, how much is the value of the benefit? So Rabbi Amr says, Rabbi Dmei Omir, that it's the, Rabbi says he just pays, how much straw would have cost. He doesn't have to pay for barley. Rav Amr says, Rabbi Dmei Sorim Bezol. No, Rabbi says he does have to pay for barley, but doesn't have to go by the current going rate, which might be more expensive. He can go by the cheaper, whatever the cheapest value of barley goes for. Tanya Kavosi de Rabba, Tanya Kavosi de Rava. And we have prices supporting both Rabba and Rava respectively. Tanya Kavosi de Rabba. Here's the prices supporting Rabba that he pays the value of straw, not barley. Reb Shimon ben Yochai says Reb Shimon Mishalem Esela Dmei Omri B'Vad. There you go. Says Reb Shimon ben Yochai in a brisa that Reuven just needs to pay the value of straw, not the value of barley. Tanya Kavosi the Rava, we have brisa like Rava. Imnenis Mishalem is Mashed. Okay, if Reuven's cow or ox or whatever it is gets benefits, so Reuven pays for the benefit. Keitzad, tell me more. How do you pay for the benefit? So achla kav kabayim, if you ate one kav or two kavs, ein omrim teshalim demeyin. We don't say, look, you have to pay the actual value of what you ate, of what the ox ate that day. No, elo omden, we evaluate kama adam rotze lahachil levento davaroy lafal pisha eno rogil. How much, right? How much would a person be willing to pay for something that he doesn't normally feed his ox, but can be fed for the ox. So meaning, so normally Reuven's ox doesn't eat barley; it normally eats straw, but he would nonetheless still pay kind of the cheapest value of barley. But if Reuven's ox eats wheat or something that would be bad for it, well, then that's something that it wouldn't be fed, and therefore it would be potter. Okay, Gevaldig. So now we get to this Gevaldig sugya of Zenene v'Zelo Chosr. Here we go. So Rav Chizda says Sorim Bar Chama. Now, Rami Bar Chama was Rav Chizda's son-in-law. I don't know if he was son-in-law at this moment in time, but Rami Bar Chama was Rav Chizda's son-in-law. So it says Rav Chizda to Rami Bar Chama, Lahavas Gaben Bo'orta Betchuma. No, you weren't around last night. The Bayalon Milim Al Yisa, that we were asked the most Gevaldige Kasha. My Milim Al Yisa. So Rami Bar Chama says, Nuzokt. What was this Gevaldige discussion? So Amalei, so it says of Chizda, listen to this. Hadar b'chotzur chaveru shalom idaito. Sarich lahalos lo sachor in sarich, period. You hear the kasha? If Reuven is living in Shimon's chotzur, on Shimon's property, Shimon doesn't know about this. Unbeknownst to Shimon, Reuven's living in his property. So does Reuven have to pay Shimon or not? Hey Chidami, so what, I need more context over here. If we're talking about a situation where, look, Shimon wasn't planning to rent out his chutzner anyway. So it's not like he was looking to make money and now he's not making money because Reuven's taken over his property. That's not the case. He wasn't looking to rent out his property. The Gavod Lo Avid Lemeger, and Reuven actually has his own house, so he doesn't need. It's not like he's like looking for a place. I don't know. Maybe Reuven is Shimon's next door neighbor. Okay, so Reuven has his own house. He's got a place to sleep. He's got a place to stay. His next door neighbor Shimon has got some kind of courtyard or something. Shimon's not doing anything with the courtyard. Reuven's like, I don't know, I just want to sleep in Shimon's courtyard, so he does it. So in that case, Zed lo nenev, Zed lo chaser. In that case, I don't know what's there to pay for. Reuven's not technically getting any benefit. It's not like he's looking for a place to rent. I mean, he's got his own place. Now, Shimon isn't losing out any money here. It's not like he was looking to rent out the place. So it's not like Reuven's preventing him from being able to like rent it out and make money. So Zed lo nenev, Zed lo chaser. Reuven's not technically getting any net benefit. Shimon, isn't losing anything. So therefore, what's the problem? Okay, what if it's talking about a situation where Shimon is looking to rent out his property, and right, so Shimon is looking to rent out his property, and Reuven is looking to rent property. Reuven doesn't have any property, doesn't have anywhere to live. Reuven is looking to rent out property, to rent a property, right? So Shimon is looking to rent out his property. Reuven is looking for a property to rent. He needs a place to live. And instead he just kind of like plops him down in Shimon's property. Well then, Zed nenev zeh chaser. Well then of course Reuven needs to pay Shimon, because Reuven is getting benefit. He needs a place to stay. And Shimon is losing out because he's looking to rent out his property. And he can't do it if Reuven is there. So of course Reuven needs to pay Shimon for staying there. But what if it's a combination, a concoction? Like my grandfather used to like to make concoctions. So what if we have a concoction? So we have Shimon. Shimon is not looking to rent out his property. Shimon is not looking to rent out his property. Reuven is searching for he needs a place to rent. So in this case, it's Zed nenev Zed lo chaser, right? Reuven is getting benefit by plopping himself down in Shimon's property because he needs a place to stay, and now he's getting value. He's staying in Shimon's property. Technically speaking, Shimon's not losing anything, right? It's not like he was looking to Airbnb his property and now he can't because Reuven's there. I mean, Shimon's property was just sitting there. We're going to see in the Gemara a little bit later on that, like, the assumption right now is that there's no costs. It's not costing Shimon anything, or Reuven's not causing any damage, whatever it might be. Like, we're talking about a situation where Shimon really wasn't looking to make money and he's not losing anything. Reuven's getting benefit, doesn't cost Shimon anything. So again, two lines to the bottom of the page. Shimon wasn't looking to Airbnb his place. Reuven is looking for a place, and he plops himself down in Shimon's Airbnb. So does Reuven have to pay Shimon? Can Reuven say to Shimon, look, well, I didn't cause you to lose anything at all. You weren't looking to Airbnb your place. I'm not costing you anything. Why can't I just stay here for free? Or can Shimon say to Reuven, but still, you're getting benefit from my property. Pay me for that benefit. That's the shaila. So what's the halacha when it comes to Zed nenev Zed lo chaser? Does Reuven have to pay Shimon? At least for the benefit. So Amar le masnisani. So BavaKama says, it's Taka Mishnah. Amar le hey masnisin. So Rav Chiz says, which Mishnah? Amar le. So BavaKama says, l'chidashah do epis for me, which is interesting. If BavaKama was Rav Chiz's son-in-law, I don't know what you say. I need you to do something for me, and I'll tell you. I don't know. Anyways, Shakal Sudre Karachle. Okay, so Rav Chizda took some kind of garment of BavaKama's and folded up for him. Okay, fine. So now BavaKama is like, all right, fine, now I'll tell you. Well, our Mishnah says that if an ox or an animal eats epis and Rishus Harabim, he doesn't have to pay for the damages, but he has to pay for the hanoya. So we want to assume there's a situation of Zenenev Zelo Chaser. The Gemara is going to explain in a second that the owner of the animal is getting benefit, but nobody's losing out over here when the animal eats the fruits. And nonetheless, we're saying Zenenev Zelo Chaser, and we're saying Mishalem is Mashanenis. You have to pay for the benefit. Omar Rave, who was also a son-in-law of Rav Chizda, I think married Rav Chizda's daughter. Where does this come up? Maybe it came up in Brachos a little bit. Maybe it comes up above Mitzir or something. I don't know. Maybe it comes up here. I don't know. Anyways, I think that Rav at one point was Rav Chizda's son-in-law as well, I believe. But anyways, Rav says to Rami Bar Chama, he says, Kamalo chali v'lo margish. Wow, how amazing it must be to be, right, that a person, doesn't get sick, never gets a little bit unwell. Gaber demari saye, somebody who God is looking out for him. Rav is being a shtickle sarcastic. He's saying, wow, Rav Chizda, wow, Rami Bar Chama, if only we all enjoyed such luxuries like you enjoy, that, Hashem is looking out for you. Even though the scenario of Zenenev Zelo Chaser by Ruvain, staying in Shimon's Airbnb, even though that is in no way similar to our Mishnah, Kibla Mine, somehow Rav Chizda accepted your suggestion and didn't ask any kashas. Rav was like, wow, if only life was so easy. Because the fact of the matter is, these two cases are not analogous. The case in our Mishnah of Ruvain's animal eating stuff in Rishus Rabim, that's Zenenev Zechaser. Ruvain's getting benefit, his animal's eating, and whoever owns the fruits is losing out. And we're saying in that case, Ruvain has to pay the owner of the fruit the benefit that his cow received, that the animal received. So that's Zenenev Zechaser. But the case that Rav Chizda is talking about is Zenenev Zelo Chaser. Shimon wasn't looking to Airbnb his place. So Reuven's getting benefit, Shimon's not losing anything. Rami Bar Chama, now why did Rami Bar Chama assume that our Mishnah was Zenenev Zelo Chaser? Because Tamperes B'Shus Rabim Afkure Mafkalu. Because fruit with Stam Peris and Rishus Arabim, you can assume it's Hefker, and therefore it's Zenenev Zelo Chaser. If they're Hefker, they're ownerless. So Reuven is getting benefit, and Shimon. I mean, interesting that I guess he would have to pay Shimon for the Anoy. If we're saying they're Hefker, then who does he pay? But okay, whatever it is. Rami Bar Chama says the situation of Zenenev Zelo Chaser. Fine. Tanan. We learn in the Mishnah, Makif Chaveru Mishalosh Ruchosav. Vegider es harishona v'sashniya v'sashlishis. Im mechayvin also, harvis mechayvin also shmamina, zenenev zeluchoser chayv. Chayv, did you get that? Probably not. It's shtickle erevini. It's not hard, really. Rashi in the Gemara, if you have the Gemara open, Rashi has a little diagram there. The diagram is actually not bad. I think it's helpful, actually. But be'etzem, you have, Shimon's got a field. Okay, Gvaldi's got a field. Shimon's field is surrounded on three sides by Reuven's fields. Reuven's got a field to the east, got a field to the north, got a field to the west. The only place where Reuven does not have a field is to the south. Shimon's field is surrounded by Reuven's field on three sides. Now, Reuven builds a fence separating his fields and Shimon's field. So Reuven builds a fence on the east side of Shimon's field, on the north side of Shimon's field, on the west side of Shimon's field, to distinguish between Reuven, there's a separation, a marker between Shimon's field and Reuven's field. So again, so let's read it inside. If Reuven, his fields surround Shimon's field in three directions, I'll say east, north, and west. And Reuven put up a fence to demarcate the separation between his fields and Shimon's field, which means that Shimon's field is now surrounded on three sides by a fence, which is nice. But at the same time, Shimon's field is not entirely enclosed, so ultimately it's not beneficial, right? Meaning, if Ruvain put up a fence on all four sides of Shimon's field, okay, great, his field is not protected. But so long as like one of the sides is wide open, so what benefit does Shimon get from having fences on three sides? The fence is not going to be useful unless it's fenced in on four sides. So Ein Mechayven also, we do not require Shimon to pay Ruvain for any of the expenses of the fence, because ultimately the fence doesn't really benefit Shimon because it's still wide open on the fourth side, but implying Haravias Mechayven also. That if Ruvain, however, had fields on all four sides of Shimon's field, which means that Shimon's field was entirely surrounded by Ruvain's fields, and then Ruvain built a fence separating his fields from Shimon's fields, which means that now Shimon's field is entirely surrounded, is entirely fenced in, which is beneficial to Shimon. So Shimon is now getting benefit from the fact that his field is protected. So this is a situation of zenene v'zeh lo chaser. Right? Zenene, Shimon is getting benefit. His field is now encompassed, right, enclosed by a fence, which is beneficial. So Shimon is getting benefit. V'zeh lo chaser, Reuven didn't lose anything. He was making the fence anyways. And we're saying that Shimon is chayiv, right? We said that if Reuven's field surrounds Shimon's field on three sides, Shimon doesn't need to pay anything because ultimately the fence is not helpful if it's wide open on one side. But if Reuven's field surrounds Shimon's field on all four sides, then Shimon would have to contribute his part, right? 50%. And that's the situation of Zen. Shimon is getting benefit from the fence. V'zeh lo chaser, and it didn't cost Reuven anything extra for Shimon because Reuven was planning to do it for himself anyways. And still we're saying because Shimon gets benefit, he has to chip in with Reuven. So let's read it again. If Reuven surrounds Shimon's field from three directions, and built a fence on the three sides of Shimon's field, and also Shimon does not need to contribute. But if Reuven surrounded all four sides and built a fence, which means that Shimon's field is entirely now fenced, I don't know if that's a word, Mechayven also, so then Shimon would have to contribute, which therefore teaches that zenene v'zeh lo chaser, Shimon's going to benefit. It's not costing Reuven anything extra. Still, Shimon needs to contribute. To which we say, no, shiny awesome. It's different over there. Do amarle ad garamt li hekefa yisera. We say no. The reason why in that particular case Shimon needs to contribute is because Reuven's argument is, hey, if your field wasn't in the middle of my fields, I wouldn't have to put up any fence. I would just have one big field. I wouldn't need to pay for a fence in the middle of my field. The only reason why I need to put up this fence in the middle is to surround your field, which is inconveniently smack in the middle of my fields. So because it's only on account of Shimon's field that Reuven needs to be putting up a fence in the first place, Reuven asks Shimon to contribute to the expense of the fence, but it's not necessarily a proof for zenene v'zeh lo chaser that somebody would have to pay. Toshma, come in here. Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Yossi, im omad nikaf v'gider saravias migadlon olav es hakol. That Rabbi Yossi says that in the first case, when Reuven surrounds Shimon on three sides, and which means that people are able to leave on the fourth side. So then, so if Reuven's field surrounds Shimon's field from three sides, and then Shimon says, oh, that's convenient. Reuven did 3/4 of the work for me. This is great. I'll just put up the fourth one. So in that case, again, Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Yossi, Omad Nikaf, if Shimon went v'gider sarvias, and he put up the fourth fence. He says, wow, thanks Reuven, you covered 3/4 of my expense. I'll just put up the fourth one. Megalklin olav esakol, we say no. There's no free there's no freebies over here. Clearly, Shimon, you benefited from Reuven's 3 fences that he put up. Split the expense with him. So time of the gider nikaf. So the reason why Shimon needs to split it with Reuven is because Shimon put up the fourth fence, indicating that he benefited from the first 3. But Hamakiv Potter, implying though, if it would have been, this time we're saying that if it would have been Reuven who put up all 4 sides, then Shimon would be Potter, implying Zanen v'zelo chaser Potter. Shmamina Zanen v'zelo chaser Potter. Shiny awesome to say no. That's also not a good proof because the Didi Sagli be Nitira Barzuza. The reason why if Reuven surrounds Shimon's field on all 4 sides, Shimon would not have to contribute to the expense, is because Shimon says to Reuven, look, Reuven, I would have put up a much cheaper fence. Therefore, I don't need to pay for your expensive fence. So, therefore, that is why Shimon is Potter. But again, it is not a proof for Zenenev Zelochoser that one would be Potter. Toshma, come in here. Habayis v'aliyah shel shnayim shenaflu. You hear the case? You hear the case? You have a 2-story building. Shimon owns the bottom floor, Reuven owns the top floor, the whole building falls down. So now Reuven, who owns the top floor, wants to rebuild. So now, the thing is, he says to Shimon, Shimon, I own the top floor, you own the bottom floor. Right? Reuven says to Shimon, right, again, I own the top floor, you own the bottom floor. I can't build the top floor, obviously, until you build the bottom floor first, so I need you to get cracking. I need you to build the bottom floor so that I can then build the top floor on top of you. Shimon's not interested. So Reuven says, all right, forget it. I mean, if you're not going to build the first floor, I'll build it. So again, so Toshma, Habayis v'aliyah, if you have a 2-story building, right, the bias, the first floor, and the aliyah, the second floor, Shel Shnayim, that they belong to 2 separate people, right? Shimon owns the ground floor, Reuven owns the top floor. Shenaflu, and the whole house fell down. Amar bala aliyah leval abayis. So Reuven says to Shimon, Livnos, Shimon, I need you to build the first floor so that I could build the second floor, which belongs to me, on top of yours. Vu'ena rotze. Shimon's not interested. Sarei balo aliyah bone bayis v'yoshev bo. So Reuven says, all right, forget it. I'm going to build the first floor. So Reuven builds the first floor and he lives in it. He moves in. Right? Reuven says, look, if Shimon's not going to build his own house, then I'll build a house. So Reuven builds a house and that's where he's living. Until Shimon pays Reuven for his expenses. Right? So again, Reuven wanted to build his second floor like it was before, and that's what he owns, the second floor. But in order to build the second floor, he needs Shimon to build the first floor. Shimon's unwilling to build the first floor. So Reuven says, all right, I'll just build it. So he builds it and he's living there. And he can stay there until Shimon pays him for his expense. Once Shimon pays him for his expense, so then now it's Shimon's and Reuven can then build, his house on top. Shimon pays Reuven for his expense, and then Reuven can now build his house on top of it. Yitziosov u'demechayiv le balabayis hascharo lo. So we just said that Shimon just needs to pay Reuven for his expense. For the costs that Reuven incurred in building Shimon's house for him. But right. So Shimon just needs to pay Reuven for his expense, but he does not subtract from that amount the rent payments that Reuven's Betzin been living in Shimon's house rent free, right? Reuven built Shimon's house for him, and then Reuven has been living there, and we're saying Shimon just needs to pay him back for his expenses. We do not subtract, all rent for all of the months that Reuven has been living in Shimon's house that he built for him. So shmamina zenene v'zelu chaser potter. So we see zenene v'zelu chaser, right? Ruvain's getting benefit, right? He needs a place to stay. He's staying in Shimon's place. V'zelu chaser, Shimon doesn't lose anything, right? Ruvain did everything for him, right? The whole house fell down. Ruvain built this house for him. Shimon didn't have to do anything. So Shimon's not losing out. Ruvain's getting benefit. He's got a place to stay. And we're saying that Ruvain does not need to pay rent as long as he's staying there. So zenene v'zelu chaser is potter. No. Shiny, awesome, the base laliyah mishtaibid. That, so what does Rashi say? The bayis laliyah mishtaibid, I don't know, 10-15 lines before Rashi gets wide. Shala bayis lispo laliyah, that the ground floor needs to, basically support the upper floor. Hilkach adin imzeh laderbo. So therefore Ruvain, I guess, is entitled, I guess, to live in the bottom floor, so long as Shimon hasn't paid for it. He's allowed to live there. The bottom floor needs to support the top floor. So, okay, so that's why, so in that particular case, that's why Ruvain doesn't need to pay Shimon, but it's not a proof for Zenen v'zelu chaser potter. Tashma, coming here. Rabbi Yehuda, Omer says Rabbi Yehuda, Av zeh dar b'chatzer chaveru shelo midaito tzarich la'alos lo sachar. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with the BavaKama and says that Ruvain would have to pay rent. So shmamina zenene v'zelu chaser chayev. Therefore, that would be implying that zenene v'zelu chaser is chayev. Ruvain has to pay for the benefit. Shiny awesome. So even there, it's different. Shim shachrirusa de ashyasa. No, the reason why Ruvain has to pay rent to Shimon is because Ruvain built Shimon a brand new house, and now Ruvain's been living in it, and there's wear and tear. So Ruvain's paying for the wear and tear, but that's not necessarily a proof for zenene v'zelu chaser. Like for example, if it was an older house where it's not like he's blackening the pristine white walls. There was already wear and tear in the house, so then maybe Ruvain would not have had to pay Shimon. Shalchu be Reb Ami. So they asked this kasha to Reb Ami. No, tell me, Reb Ami, what's the halacha? If Ruvain moves into Shimon's Airbnb, right? The initial question, Shimon has an Airbnb, but he's not planning to rent it out. Ruvain moves in. What's the halacha? Zenene v'zelu chaser. What's the halacha? Amar v'chima asa lo umachasro umayiziko. Reb Ami says, look, at the end of the day, what damage did Ruvain cause? Right again, ma'asalo. What did Ruvain do to Shimon at the end of the day? He wasn't looking to Airbnb his place. He wasn't looking to make money. Machasro, what's Shimon lacking? Umayazeko, what did he damage Shimon? Let Ruvain get away with it. Reb Chia bar Abba, Omar says, Reb Chia bar Abba nisyashiv badavar. Reb Chia bar Abba's response was, look, we need to look into it. I don't know. We have to research this halacha. And they followed up with Reb Chia bar Abba. They say, no, so what did you find? What's the halacha by zenene v'zelu chaser? Omar, so Reb Chia bar Abba says, look, kulei ay shalchuli va'azle. What are you asking me a chinik for? Ilu ashkechei ba taima milo shalachnalu. If I found the answer, if I knew what to tell you, wouldn't I have told you? Itmar was stated of Kahana, Rav Yochanan. This is Rav Yochanan. Eino tzarich lalos lo sacher. Says Rav Chana, the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that by zenene v'zelu chaser, he doesn't have to pay. Rabbi Bo, Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Bo, the name of Rabbi Yochanan, tzarich lalos lo sacher. That by zenene v'zelu chaser, he has to pay. Amar Papa, Rabbi Bo la beferish itmar el michlala itmar. Says Rabbi Papa that Rabbi Bo never heard Rabbi Yochanan say this explicitly, that zenene v'zelu chaser, he'd have to pay. But rather it was implied, or so Rabbi Bo thought. Rabbi Bo, wait, what? That he would have to pay, right? Right. But Rabbi Bo thought that it was implied that Rabbi Yochanan held that zenene v'zelu chaser, that you would have to pay. The Tanan is written in Mishnah, Natal Evan Okora Shel Hektish, that if the Gizber, if the temple treasury took a stone or a beam that belonged to the temple treasury of Hektish, and he took it, so is lo ma'al. It's not me'ila because he's the temple treasurer, and he's taking the beam for himself, so it's not giving it to anybody else. He had it before, he has it now, so there's no me'ila. But but if he gives the beam or the stone to his friend, and he gives it away to his friend, so then the gizbar, the treasurer, is violating me'ila. Bano'a, yes, being korban me'ila, fine. Bano'a l'soch beiso, if he built the beam or the stone into his house, harezeh lo ma'al, it is not me'ila ad shida tachteh shavapruta, until he gets benefit, a shavapruta worth of benefit from this beam that he built into the house. Amar Shmuel, and says Shmuel, v'ushei nicha al pi aruba. When we say that when he builds it into his house, he's potter until he gets benefit from it, it's not if he like permanently puts it in his house, but like if, for example, there's like a skylight in the roof and he lays the beam over it. So he didn't actually build it into the house. So in that case, we're saying he's potter. Was sitting before Rabbi Yochanan v'Kamar, and he says, Mishmei Shmuel, in the name of Shmuel, Zosomeres Adar b'Chatzor Chaveiro, that if somebody, that in the case of Ruvain living in Shimon's Airbnb, that Shimon wasn't planning to Airbnb, Shlomi Daito Tzarich La'alos Lo Socher, would need to pay, Ruvain would have to pay Shimon, right? Just like we said that if the treasurer built this beam, just kind of laid it over the skylight, and then he got a Shava Puta's worth of benefit, he needs to pay for it, even though like the other people, the treasury, weren't necessarily aware that he did this, right? What does Rashi say? Right, the last Rashi on the page, that when he lives under it, chayav, he has to pay. He's chayav for me. Even though he did it without the das of hektish, still he has to pay. So also when Ruvain, moves into Shimon's Airbnb, so Ruvain would have to pay Shimon v'shasakle. And Rabbi Yochanan was quiet. Iu saver midishasik modele. So we both thought that since Rabbi Yochanan was quiet, it means that he agrees with him that zenena v'zet lo chaser, he would have to pay. V'loi, it's not true. Ashguche lo ashgach. Rabbi Yochanan wasn't paying attention to Rabbi because he didn't think that this was relevant. Because because there's no concept of hektish shalom midas, which is like zenena v'zet lo chaser. No, everything's considered with das because it's hektish is best and belongs to Hashem, and Hashem knows everything. So that's why he would have to pay, but it isn't a proof for zenene v'zeh lo chaser. Okay, we're going to continue with this sugya tomorrow. Wow, that daf was a mouthful. The first part of it, that was daf chaf of Masechta BavaKama. The first part of the daf was like some technical stuff related to Shane. Then we discussed that when an animal eats Rishus HaRabim, so he's potter for nizakim, but he still has to pay for anah, for the benefit that we got. So Machlokas Rabba and Rava, does he if he ate barley, is the hana based on the straw that he normally eats, or just cheap barley? Rabba says straw, Rava says cheap barley. Then we got into this great sugya of zenena v'zel chaser. It's an interesting sugya, right? If Reuven gets benefit and Shimon doesn't technically lose out anything, does Reuven have to pay? We're going to continue with this discussion tomorrow. Friends, peace out.